I recently read a story about the late 19th and early 20th century British writer and poet Rudyard Kipling. He was famous for his poetry. You might recall the Ballad of Gunga Din. He was also famous for many of the books he had written. Think of Captain Courageous, How the Leopard Got His Spots, or The Jungle Book. In the course of his long writing career, he became world famous, and he also became quite wealthy. It seems that a newspaper reporter came up to him one day and said, "Mr. Kipling, I just read that somebody had calculated that the money you made from your writings amounts to over $100 a word." The reporter reached into his pocket and pulled out a $100 bill and gave it to Kipling and said, "Here's a $100 note, Mr. Kipling. Now you give me one of your $100 words." Upon receipt of the money, Rudyard Kipling looked at the money, put it in his pocket, and said, "Thanks." As one commentator has written, the word thanks is certainly a $100 word. In fact, it would be more accurate maybe to say that it's a $1 million word. It's a small word, but it has a powerful meaning. It might only have 6 letters, but it gets across a message that few other words are capable of achieving. It's a word that conveys a powerful message about the relationship between two people and the appreciation of what one has done for another. It's a word that is said with special meaning in response to something maybe unexpected, maybe undeserved, that one person has done for or given to the other. And when that little word is somehow missing, we feel it. We feel it deeply. When someone fails to express gratitude for something that we've done, maybe we've gone out of our way to do something, to do a favor, to do something for someone, and they don't say thanks, we feel hurt. We feel used, ignored, taken for granted, and we may even wonder why we bothered in the first place. In today's gospel lesson, Luke tells us a familiar story of the 10 lepers and of their response to Jesus' healing in their lives. Now, as I've said before, leprosy in ancient times and even up into the 1950s was a scourge, and it was feared as a contagious scourge. What the New Testament refers to as leprosy actually covered a variety of skin ailments besides what is true leprosy, and which is now called Hansen's disease. In Jesus' time, if someone was diagnosed with leprosy, they were placed in a kind of a quarantine. They were not allowed to have contact with any uninfected members of society, even their closest family members, husbands, wives, children, parents, or their dearest friends. The only close associates they were allowed were other lepers. As a result, lepers were, in a very real sense, under a death sentence. There was no cure. No one dared come near them. No one would touch them, handle anything they had touched. Lepers were assumed to be guilty of some kind of a serious sin, and the disease was seen as a punishment from God. So the unfortunate leper suffered not only from a serious and fatal illness, but he was segregated from the rest of society. He was looked down upon with little or no pity because it was believed that he deserved his fate. The only release for this miserable condition given under the Jewish law was that if a person were healed, they were to go to the priest, show themselves to the priest, and then the priest could declare that they were disease-free. Now, I don't know how often this may have happened. I kind of expect it probably didn't happen very often. If, however, it did happen, Can you imagine the feelings that that leper or former leper would have had? He could rejoin society. He could rejoin the company of his family, of his friends. He was seen as forgiven by God. He had his life back. So, being mindful of the rules, the 10 lepers in today's gospel would have called out, as Luke tells us, to Jesus from a distance. Now, they had probably heard of Jesus, the rabbi, the teacher, the healer. Whether or not they believed what they heard, we don't know. But they certainly had nothing to lose by calling out to him and asking him to help them. Everyone else on the road that day saw a group of lepers, a group of outcasts. They were unclean, possibly contagious and dangerous. And they probably deserved their fate anyway. That's what everybody else saw. But when Jesus saw the 10 lepers, he saw something very different. He saw their pain. Not only their physical pain, but also the pain of separation from their families, their friends, their neighbors. He saw the pain of being shunned and looked down upon. He saw their loneliness. He saw in them his Father's beloved children, enslaved by illness, ignorance, prejudice, and fear. Jesus saw their need, and they were healed. He told them, "Go show yourselves to the priests." And Luke tells us as they went, they were cleansed. What rejoicing they must have felt. They were well. They were no longer outcasts. The death sentence had been lifted. They could go home. Now, of course, we know that of the 10, only one returned to thank Jesus in person. Some might like to think of that 9 who didn't come back as a rather selfish and ungrateful lot. I don't know. But I would prefer to think of them as maybe just being so excited, so overwhelmed by their good fortune, by the blessings that Jesus had given them of their recovered health, their rehabilitated standing in society, that they just forgot. They were carried away in the excitement of the moment, and they just went on to the priest to be certified. We know that only one came back. And that was a Samaritan, which, as you know, was about as low as you could get on the social totem pole of that day in Jewish society. That coupled with being a leper, you were probably about a -10. This one, Luke tells us that when he saw that he was healed, he turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet, and he thanked him. He thanked him. It is, I believe, the quality of saying thanks that commands our attention here, rather than a long discussion of who and how many returned to give thanks. Sometimes it's easy to give thanks to God or to other people. And other times, well, it's not so easy. Sometimes it can be downright hard. Today's lesson from the prophet Jeremiah speaks, I think, of such a difficult time. Jeremiah wrote to the captive Jews in Babylon, and he told them, "Build houses and live in them, plant gardens and eat their produce, take wives and have sons and daughters. Seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare." Well, Jeremiah doesn't use the word thanks or thanksgiving. I believe it's implied. Even in captivity, Jeremiah is telling the captive Jews that they have something to hope for. They have something to be thankful for. It isn't always easy to find something to be thankful for. But as Christians, it is part of our vocation. It is part of who we are to look for it, to find it, and then to proclaim it. Because the truth be told, it's always there. I began this morning with a story about the British writer and poet Rudyard Kipling, and I will conclude with the words of the late Henri Nouwen. He was a well-known spiritual writer, a Dutch Roman Catholic priest. I believe what he wrote here exemplifies the point that I've been trying to make. He wrote a book about his experiences while living and serving in Peru and in Bolivia. It's entitled Gracias. He wrote, "The word that I kept hearing wherever I went was gracias. It sounded like the refrain from a long ballad of events. Gracias a usted. Gracias a Dios. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Thanks be to God. Many thanks. I saw thousands of poor and hungry children. I met many young men and women without money, a job, or a decent place to live. I spent long hours with sick, elderly people, and I witnessed more misery and pain than ever before in my life. But in the midst of it all, that word lifted me again and again to a new realm of seeing and hearing. Gracias. Thanks. What I claim as a right, my friends in Bolivia and Peru received as a gift. And slowly I learned. I learned what I must have forgotten somewhere in my busy, well-planned, and very useful life. I learned that everything that is freely given by God of love. All is grace, light and water, shelter and food, work and free time, children, parents, grandparents, birth and death. It is all given to us. Why? So that we can say gracias, thanks, thanks to God, thanks to each other, thanks to all and everyone. To him who is the giver of all good things be all honor, all glory, and all thanks.
Amen.